everybody, and welcome to Moment of Presence. I am Michelle with Moksha Grace Coaching, and you are here for your moment of presence for the week. And we have a special guest with us today. I am so excited. Seth is here with us. He is an independent contractor, public speaker, spoken word artist, which I definitely want to talk to you about and find out more. Using his gifts and passions to motivate and build deep relationships, grow in humility, and cultivate their faith. I think we could all use a lot more faith in today's world, Seth. So I present Seth Butler to everybody today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super stoked to be having this conversation, and I think that listeners will get a lot of value out of it.
That is the plan. And this is a little bit different. It's something I wanted to dive into. Normally I, pick a topic and we kind of dive into the topic. And, last week I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of thinking and expanding. And, resilience keeps coming up for me. And being in service, right? That's our purpose. That's why we're all supposed to be here. And so I was meditating and I went, the faces of resilience, the faces of people being in service. And I was like, huh. And so, here you are. Our first guest on this little series that I want to start of just this is the face of resilience. So what we're here to talk about today, and you and I had kind of prepped a little bit, as far as our conversation and what we wanted to talk about, because you have so much to bring, was the fact of inclusion instead of seclusion or silos. And I would love for you to share with everyone just your work. What is your passion about that?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm very passionate about just people, particularly connecting people with one another. That is the whole purpose of why I ended up in kind of the umbrella field of diversity and inclusion work when I was in higher education. There's something really unique and special when you're able to establish a deep and meaningful relationship with somebody that knows you and that sees you, and there's so much life value in that exchange. But we're also in a culture and a world where we tend to focus on our differences. We tend to isolate. We tend to create cliques and silos and groups that hinder our ability to connect with somebody that could be that life change that we really need. And so that's kind of the heartbeat of why I do what I do, and why I like to talk to individuals and groups of, hey, how can we go about interacting with others that sets us up to engage in a life-changing relationship, rather than enter into an interaction with so much guardedness that it potentially prevents us from meeting our next best friend.
That's huge. That's huge, because so many of us have so much fear about showing our true selves, or showing our vulnerabilities, showing our differences. And it's it puts up this barrier, this block. And you're right, it takes away those opportunities that we're going to miss, and who knows if they're going to come back again.
Right.
You just don't know. For everyone watching, just so you know, you can please questions, comments, thoughts, please share them. Share this out with someone that you think also needs to hear this message, because I think this is such an important message in today's world. Because have you seen the social media streams?
Right.
Have you watched the news? And please say no.
Occasionally.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying what's going on out there.
It is. And it's because of some of the things that we see that are, I would say, overrepresented in the media, that influence a little bit of my decision to leave higher education and kind of go on this adventure of working for myself and finding means to provide for my family via side contract work and public speaking and training. One of the things that I saw, Michelle, was this fear that you talked about
Mhm.
being yourself and inviting others into our lives. This is something that was kind of very common, at least what I saw in the university setting. I would go in and I would deliver trainings and conversations on diversity and inclusion, and I saw that the byproduct of those conversations were not resulting in relationships that I wanted to see cultivated. Um, it was not uncommon for a student to approach me after a class presentation and say, "Seth, I want to be involved in these conversations, but I've gotten involved in them before, and I've been hurt. I was called, this name in the book, or I'm a racist bigot, or whatever." And it's not because that's my intention. I'm trying to engage, but I don't know how. There's maybe some ignorance there, and
Mhm.
not grace to grow in that, or they've been the one hurting other people. Hey, Seth, I've tried to engage in this conversation, and this was particularly around the time of George Floyd, where everybody was talking about
Right.
racial tension and racial differences, which I think is good.
Mhm.
But there was some students who would say, "Hey, I shared my opinion or my thought or a question, and I saw the hurt or the pain.
Mhm.
I'm afraid of hurting people." So
Yeah.
fear keeps us from really putting ourselves out there because we don't wanna hurt people, and we also don't wanna be hurt ourselves. So then
Yeah.
we just don't engage.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about that, and I had to learn this the hard way, is that when we don't put ourselves out there and we're not real, and I'm still learning this and practicing it, the other person doesn't get a chance to either learn the lesson that was going to come from that interaction
Mm,
or learn whatever was supposed to be learned, what the lesson was for each of us,
right.
and to potentially shift perspective. So you're cutting something off before it really began.
Mhm. I think it goes to your word at the beginning of resiliency, right? What does it look like to be resilient in the face of tough conversations? What does it look like to be resilient in the face of maybe something that was offensive or like, ooh, that kind of stings a little bit? Because it's not really modeled very well in our society of how to graciously disagree, how to graciously receive offense.
Right.
And so, what we do is we model the behaviors that we see around us and that we're primed with. And to be quite honest, there's not a lot of like disagreement that we see between two individuals or two parties, and then we walk away like, wow, they handled that really well. Like that was awesome.
Yeah.
Usually it ends with like mudslinging and attacks and like people just getting entrenched. And so it's no surprise that that's what we often then reflect back because that's what we're intaking so much.
Yeah. And can you imagine having like that kind of passion and argument over something like, um, I like rainy days versus sunny days? And if two people are different, okay, but then that goes back to kind of what I've said before and when we've talked is we still bleed the same blood. We're still
Right.
bleeding our the same blood. We're still connected energetically, so we are the same. Isn't o- isn't it okay that we just choose to think differently or be differently?
Yeah.
And I think and then isn't the fear really uh why am I so resistant? Why does it make me so angry
Hmm.
that someone else doesn't act like me or isn't like me? And then what is the deeper fear?
I think it comes, I think that the deeper fear probably boils down to identity, self worth, where we draw our value from. So I think for me, like when I think about the conversation of race, and as a black individual, I don't know that I have the most popular opinions when it comes to racial things, and it's because that I don't tie all of who I am, all of my identity to my skin color.
Mhm.
Um, it matters more for some people than it does for me. And
Hmm.
so um, throughout my life, I've been able to more easily shrug things off of my shoulders that have been pertained to race than maybe some friends of mine. And I'm not saying that I'm better or they're better or anything like that. It's just the way how much weight we tie to certain things. And so rainy days or sunny days, people typically aren't tying their personhood to those things,
Yeah.
but a lot of their personhood is tied to, race or gender or sexuality or spiritual beliefs, to the point where anytime that kind of general topic comes up, it's not being viewed as opinions on this topic. It's being, you have an opinion about me and my personhood. So, of course,
Hmm.
I'm going to put on the gloves and we're going to duke it out because I don't want to be hit in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good point. We're not, well, we can be personally affected if it's raining or if it's not, but we're not as attached to the identity and the definition of what that means
Yeah.
versus when we attach ourselves to whether it's our skin color or how much we make or our title, um, a thousand other things I can probably throw out there. But when we detach and take a step back and we go, okay, how are we the same?
Yeah.
And look at that, find the commonality.
Yes.
And what have you seen when you see a group of people or students, or when you're talking, when you bring that up and they shift,
Right.
what have you noticed?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the approaches that I use is, I've intentionally been a lot more just careful about language that I'm using.
Hmm.
So I typically don't use diversity and inclusion language.
Hmm.
Um, like, I understand what that means, but it has created such a negative connotation and kind of visceral response for some people that I've adopted the language of relational curiosity, which is the ability to genuinely be curious about somebody, allow them to be curious about you through this relationship exchange. And what I've seen when people are willing to do that, they put down their guard because they have to acknowledge the fact that there's no possible way they could fully know everything about that other person when they're operating out of these pre-structured boxes that we force this person into. Um, and I've had this experience myself where, hey, Seth is a black person. Here's some preconceived notions that I have about who he is based on that box that he kind of fits into. So now I'm going to fit my interactions to that. Versus, hey, what about you don't know? Look at me visually. You don't know that I'm a father, that I'm a husband, I have sickle cell trait, that my daughter had heart surgery. None of those things you can see. And
Hmm.
so it takes this genuine curiosity to get to know me,
Hmm.
and for me to be willing to share my story, where you'll be able to see, hey, yes, he's this, but he's all these other things that he is, if I would be willing to be curious about his life.
Yeah, yeah. And I love that because, we do that. Well, we hope to do that. We hope that other people will do that for other people and get curious. And we can bring that curiosity into everything that we do,
Mhm.
into every reaction we have, whether it's about somebody else, whether it's about a situation, whether it's about ourselves. And, going back to, why am I reacting that way? Why am I taking offense that somebody asked me a question that they probably don't know the answer to?
Right.
And that's why they're asking. And isn't it better that they're asking than just making assumptions about me?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. And that's where the motto that I use in a lot of my trainings is growth and grace, where we all need to grow in a multitude of areas in our lives, but we also need to experience grace. We need to be conduits of grace, where I'm going to be gracious with this person because they don't know or they haven't had my experience, but I'm also going to be a recipient of grace, where I'm going to say something, I'm going to step in it, and I need to be gracious with myself because there's no possible way that I could know either. And so when we're able to do that, I think it opens the door for literally life-changing exchanges rather than keeping people at bay because of the fear or because of this preconceived notion that, oh, I already have this person figured out.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Um, it's it's that assumption that you do have somebody figure it out, and it rocks the relationship.
Mhm.
Um, and you're not, again, allowing the expansion of what could be. And so
Mhm.
I think that that's so important for us to remember. Um, how do you hope the world will be in a year?
Oh man. I It's my hope that we would begin to get to a place where that natural childlike curiosity begins to become more of the norm rather than people being attacked for
Mm.
curious thinking. So I often reference like Curious George in a lot of my talks because it's a show that my daughters like to watch. It always starts with this monkey who gets into trouble or makes a huge mess that needs to be cleaned up. But at the end of every episode, there's learning, there's growth, there's these aha epiphany moments that would not have occurred if George did not indulge his curiosity. Um, but we've stifled that along the way
Mhm.
somewhere. Whether it's the certain socialization components in our lives kind of suppress this curiosity where now we're hesitant, now we're tripping over our words, now we're worried about being politically correct, um, and our intentions aren't able to be seen because we're so worried about all these other things that have been created, that yeah, it's damaging. And so to your question, I hope that we can begin to genuinely be curious about one another rather than operating out of stereotypes. I think that would do wonders for the world.
Can you imagine?
Very little.
I mean, seriously, imagine what it would be like to, instead of be turned off by somebody having a different, a different job or a different belief than you, and just be curious, and how much more, not just our mind would be expanded and probably our heart, but humanity.
Right.
But humanity, if we just got curious. And
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you brought up Curious George, because of course, as I was a kid, uh, that was a big. I loved Curious George, and curiosity. And I don't like that term, curiosity kills the cat, because it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that curiosity is what allows life to flow the way that it's supposed to. How does this work? Why
Mhm.
does that relationship work and this relationship doesn't? What is this person doing that I'm not doing that I could be doing? And what can I learn from that?
Mhm.
And I have a very wise mentor that teaches us about, not making accommodations, but
Mm.
compromise. Okay, we don't agree, but where can we find middle ground?
Right.
And that's the part, because don't we all want, well, if we dive deep into ourselves, don't we all want the same thing? Peace,
Yeah.
love, and happiness. I mean, it's just it's so simple, and yet, because people have turned it into something cheeky or cheesy or a bumper sticker,
Mhm.
but isn't it true? And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No, I think so, but I think the part that we miss, especially when we look at Curious George, is that, um, in order for him to arrive at these aha moments, these epiphanies, the learning
Hmm.
and growth, there has to be trouble that he gets into. There has to
Hmm.
be a mess that then has to be worked through to be cleaned up, and that's where I find, people, not that they're not necessarily willing, but they don't know how to meander through the mess of relationships and of life to see kind of what's on the other side of that, right? So it's much easier to just, let's agree to disagree and go our separate ways rather than trying to find any sort of middle ground because that requires work and effort and
Hmm.
sweat and maybe some tears, right?
Hmm.
And so like relationships are messy, life is messy, nothing is perfect, despite what Instagram tells us.
Yeah.
And so I think if we're willing to kind of roll up our sleeves and see value on the other side of the messiness that is relationships, I think there's tremendous value. Even if you arrive at a point where, hey, we are going to go our separate ways, but there's still learning and growth that happens in engaging with the mess of that relationship,
Mhm.
where you're still, both parties are still better for it at the end. And it's easier just to like assume we're not going to connect, we're not going to get to any middle ground. I'm going to kind of go over to my people over here, and I'm not even going to engage or cross the line at all. And I just don't think that that's what humanity needs.
Well, it's also not really living.
No.
You're sticking yourself in a comfort zone or your own box, and you're not trying anything new. And I love that you said what if. Everybody always goes to the what if, and then it's the negative.
Right.
What if you try, you fail, but the lesson that you learned catapults you to where you actually want to be?
Right.
What
Yep.
what if you go and you meet the love of your life? But so many people in their mind, or we've been raised that way, we always go to the negative.
Hmm.
What if, yeah, it's challenge. What has been an aha or epiphany moment in the last week or month, if you'd like to share? What would be an epiphany moment that you've had recently?
Um, it's interesting. I just wrote about this the other day, um, talking about the ability and willingness to get excited about things that other people are excited about. And I approach it from the lens of a father of three small daughters. Um, so I had this kind of like vulnerable moment where I was sharing. There's so much excitement and passion that my two older, who are 5 and 3, and then my youngest is 9 months. They're
Oh my
always
gosh.
dad, 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 look at this. Dad, look what I found. Dad, look what I built. Look what I made. Look what I colored. All of these things, and there's so much passion in their eyes and in their face, and they just want the acknowledgement. And obviously, like most of the stuff is like not awe inspiring. It's not exciting based on like I've lived so much more life and just the different filters that we use. And so as the always beckon dad, my response is a lot of times like, "Oh, that's great, honey. Oh, that's nice." You know? And the
Yeah.
other the other week, I had that typical like, "Ah, okay," like not trying to mimic the excitement that I was given from my daughter. And I could just see the energy and like the kind of the light in her face kind of like just drained, like, "Oh, okay." And she kind of walks away. And I felt terrible. Like I was just like, "Oh gosh, I'm such a terrible father." Um, and I reflected on that and I thought about it and having this reconciliation moment where like, okay, I'm not excited about the millionth crayon drawing that you did that looks exactly like the others. I'm not excited about the dandelion that you picked that looks exactly like. I'm not excited about it. I'm not passionate about it. But just because I don't share the passion for the activity or the object or the whatever doesn't mean that I can't join in with them in excitement because I love them. And so I tried this on this week to talk about what happened like this week. And there was some, I forget what it was, but I responded with like a lot of excitement. And then like the joy just exponentially grew. And I was like, really? Show me. And then like to see like the giddiness in the child's face and all of that. And so like this moment does not have to be held to just toddlers and children. It's something that we have the ability to really add positive impact into those around us. Where I'm not excited about coding in computers. That's not
Mhm.
my jam. But if I have somebody who's like, hey, I just wrote this code for this app and whatever, I can be excited for them. Tell me about it. Why are you excited about it? I could give one rip about the code, but I care about you. And so I want my excitement to be placed on you, the human, rather than the object of your joy, which happens to be the coding. If we can figure out how to navigate that well and be consistent in practicing it, oh my goodness, we're going to create so much positive ripple effects that people are going to pursue their dreams and not lose the spark of passion because someone didn't respond well.
Yeah. And I love watching you tell that story, because what I want to point out, if you don't mind, uh, is the fact that when you were saying how you responded in the beginning, there was that, oh, I'm not a good dad. And you could see, right, your body language. Ugh. And then when you responded the different way and you shared in her joy, not over the little thing, but because you were sharing in the joy, you could see you light up.
Yeah.
And so there's this power in the emotional piece of that, that you're sharing in the emotion and of the experience, that
Hmm.
then that connection is palpable and it gets stronger.
Yep.
And that's what's so amazing. And if we could learn how to tap into that more, because how did you feel after that experience when you tried it and you saw the joy and her lighting up?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a tremendous difference because nothing really changed about the object of her joy, right? It's the same old things that she does every day, but something changed about the her passion, and it's not being stifled. So to be able to contribute to someone's passion without contributing to like the subject the subject that they're passionate about, we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing more than I want as a dad than to see my daughters be happy and enjoy the things that they enjoy, and knowing that I can contribute to that. That's the difference that you see, because like the fact that she was happier made me happy. And I want that for her. And knowing that on the unconscious level, when I respond out of my genuine apathy for the drawing,
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to tap into how I feel about the object. I need to tap into the love that I have for the person. That distinction is going to influence interactions.
Yeah. And what you said, but you didn't say it, but you said it, was, but, and so I'll say it, is the gift you gave her,
Hmm.
because she was able to receive and see the joy that she brought you. And so she could give back to you from her
Mhm.
younger self. And that's something that she'll take with her. She'll remember that. She may
Mhm.
not remember that exact moment, but she's going to remember that dad was present,
Right.
that you were there with her in that moment, whatever it is that you guys are doing. And
Mhm.
being present, it works wonders for relationships. Yes, it does, Steve.
Right.
And those little moments and the childlike wonder are things that we also should be tapping back into and remembering that we have that in common.
Mhm.
The going outside and seeing the clouds and going, that one looks like a bunny, or whatever. But taking those moments, and kudos that your daughter is still stopping and smelling the dang flowers. And that's something that we need to remember to do for ourselves. And may she never forget that.
Yeah, so many flowers in our house, so many rocks that we have to tell her, Let's just leave this outside," because she is a special human being, with her love for being outside.
Yesterday, literally, Krista was sharing the same thing of when she was a kid, she would just pick up little things that she'd find, whether it was a rock or a piece of glass or something.
Yep.
And Krista, I'm going to just tell your story a little bit. And a teacher said to her, so you're collecting trash.
Mm.
And that's the kind of attitudes and that's what we need to stop. Like,
Yeah.
stop judging people. Stop judging what someone else cares so much about, and get curious and just be with them in that moment.
Oh yeah, and that's the transferability of right now for the 5-year-old to the 25, 35, 45, 55-year-old is, why is it that somewhere along the way we stop sharing our joys, our passions, our excitements, because
Mhm.
they've been stomped on. I'm really excited about you fill in the blank, and someone gives their honest, genuine response to the object that you're excited about, and they forget that they should be excited for you, about you, regardless of whatever. So like I appreciate some of the things that friends and family have supported me in over the years, where there's not really genuine excitement. So like one of my sisters does not really like track and field. I was a 3-time state champ. She was excited about me, about my success, but she did not like the sport. And so like, that's okay. But
Mm-hmm.
I never felt unsupported by her. I never felt unloved. I never felt that she wanted me to fail in what I was kind of giving my life over to. And again, that distinction, one, to be able to recognize that there's a difference, and two, do something once you recognize, oh, I don't have to be excited about the Legos. I can just be excited about my daughter. Boom, I can do that. Right?
Yeah.
Once you kind of cross over into that, like that mindset shift, you're going to realize that you have the ability to uplift people all day long, and they're going to start sharing more like, oh, well, I shared that and Seth was excited. Like no one got excited about my pottery before because it's just dang pottery, but like Seth was excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm not excited about pottery, I'm just excited about that person, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what they created, like,
Yes.
wow, yeah, that's amazing. And so here's an epiphany moment I just had, because how many times, and think about, and I'm sure you've read Winnie the Pooh with your daughters. Think about that scene where Winnie the Pooh and Piglet go and check on Eeyore,
Mhm.
and Eeyore's not having a good day. I don't think he had a good week. And they just sit down with him, and he's like, "What are you doing?" "Well, we're just going to be with you."
Yeah.
Going back to the present comment and being present with you. Well, if we can teach people emotional intelligence to be with somebody in their time of need, their time of sorrow, their time of grief, why can't we do that when they're having a good time too? Why can't we be there with them in their joy?
Right.
And why do we have to bring our, I don't want to say, well, your daughter's not in the room, right? Why do we have to bring our shit to the table? Like, why do we have to share in that? Why can't we leave that for us to deal with on our end and just be in the moment and be in the joy with them?
Yeah. I think there's lots of reasons, but I think it comes down to being modeled. Where if we don't have any reference point and it's not modeled to us from others to be excited about the lives and the activities that others are participating in, and just like, hey, you get the spotlight, yeah, awesome, good for you, then I think it's an unrealistic expectation that we would expect that to be produced in people where it's not been modeled to them or hasn't been taught, or there's not been enough intentional thinking. um, and that's something that even at a young age, like my wife and I are having conversations with our daughters, like birthdays. It's not your birthday, it's your sister's birthday. Be happy for her. You're gonna have your birthday, and it's so trivial, but it's also like, um my 5-year-old, and bless her heart, she's gonna watch this at some point when she's older and be like, Dad, you put me on blast all the time. But she is such a sweetheart, because there was I went on a daddy daughter date with my younger daughter, who was 3, and after ice cream or whatever, we stopped at the store and I let her pick out a toy, like a $5 toy that
Mhm.
and she came home. I could see my older daughter's face. There was like kind of like an immediate like envy and jealousy, like, oh, I wish I could have got a toy. But then what she did, even in kind of like her sadness, she was like, that's really cool, Nora. I'm happy for you. And like that like was probably one of the proudest dad moments, because like for me, I'm like, oh, bless your heart, Leah, because you could see her kind of fighting this like, oh, I wanted to do that, but she ended up doing something else with mom. But like, it resulted in a different experience. But then trying to like not take that experience away from her little sister, and then being able to practice that, because I mean we talk about it all the time, was just one of the greatest moments as a dad that I can think of.
The self-awareness that you are bringing to those girls, oh my gosh, and that you're allowing them to be them is just, it's amazing.
I love being a dad.
You can tell, you can see it all over your face. I love that. I love that. Seth, where can people find you?
Yeah. So I'm most active on LinkedIn. I don't have other forms of social media. Um, and so I don't know if I'll ever get any forms of social media. People always say, "Oh, you should get on TikTok, or you should get on was it X now, right? Not Twitter."
Yeah, X.
I used to have a Twitter. Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the best, and then find me on my website, sethjbutler.com. And then I've recently started writing more on Substack, just random thoughts that are incohesive and just jumbled. But I'm writing a little bit more now too.
Well, and so so before we end, because hold on a second, because word artist, the spoken word artist. So just tell me a little bit more about that. Tell everybody a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So in my work, when I'm doing conversations around relational curiosity and just like humanity, a lot of what I do centers on these creative, poetic pieces that I deliver. I do them on. I've done some on race. I've done some on mental health. I've done some on the industry of diversity and inclusion. I've done some on friendship. I've done some on marriage, and so I write creatively, and then it's not like a Robert Frost type of poem. It's performative art, and so that is something that often is kind of like the linchpin in a lot of my talks and presentations, and I build upon that to deliver a message.
I love that. That's awesome. I will be reading more and more every time you put something out. I'm just diving in, and we have a couple other conversations that we have to get on the books and schedule because I don't want to stop here. We have so much more to talk about,
Yeah.
and I look forward to that. I always like to do some breathing. If you wouldn't mind doing that with me, with our listeners, watchers. So 3 deep breaths, hold at the top, and then slow exhales. And just as we're going through this, everyone that's been listening and watching, just think about the childlike wonder that you're going to bring into your day today. Just do just one thing that would be like a child. Not a temper tantrum, but something that would bring joy. Just one little thing. So deep breath in. Maybe it's looking at the clouds. Exhale slowly. I'll do another deep breath in. And a slow exhale. I just did this with a client. They said, I just don't breathe like this all the time. It's the problem. Big deep breath in. And slow exhale. Are you teaching your kids how to do meditation or giving themselves some time?
Not so much breathing work, more so emotional identification of my youngest has lots of temper tantrums, and so instead of like just falling on the floor and yelling, like, hey, just let us know you're frustrated. Like, you don't have to scream, you don't have to yell, just say I'm frustrated. And so to see her kind of work that, where she's like, I'm frustrated. So we're not quite to the deep breathing yet, but I'm sure we'll get there at some point.
And you'll move into the my body's feeling frustrated.
Right.
you'll move into that next. That's the next stage of it. Well,
Exactly.
thank you so much, Seth, for joining us today and for being here on Moment of Presence. And it's always it's such an honor to talk to you and just spend time with you. So thank you. And I look forward to our next talk on toxic positivity.
Yes.
Definitely can't wait for that one. And we'll definitely get that scheduled and let everyone know when that one will be. So thank you again for being here. And go have some fun. Go be joyous.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course. I'll talk to you soon.
All
Bye,
right.
everybody.